Hi, my name is Shelby Redfield Kilgore, and I am a Korean international adoptee and the filmmaker of all these foster care and adoption films. I always want to thank anyone who keeps returning to my channel and watching these videos. It means so much to me that you are continuing to learn about foster care and adoption. And to any newcomers, welcome. And I hope that you will support my work by liking, commenting, and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Today on Adoption Education, I'm going to revisit the question, what is open adoption? As an adoptee who grew up in a closed adoption, I always look for this answer. Is open adoption better for the adopted child? And I've always wondered, had I known my first mother growing up, would I have not felt a hole in my heart? Would I not have felt like something was missing in my life? Anytime that I come across a story where it's open adoption, I always ask the adoptee if they feel like they were missing something or felt a void growing up. And all of the open adoption stories I have filmed have been with kids that are not adults yet. They're still children or teenagers. And they express not feeling that void or hole in their heart that I grew up with. And Tiffany is the first adult adoptee who grew up in an open adoption that could reflect on this question for me. I know it's just one adoptee experience and that every adoptee is unique. We're not monolithic in our lived experiences. But I feel like with Tiffany, describing her upbringing and the way that she acted, but as an adult can really talk about maybe what lies underneath the behaviors and her motivations. It's very similar to the adoptees I've talked to in open adoptions that are still children, And it's so interesting to me. So Tiffany expressed that she didn't feel like anything was missing in her life growing up, but as an adult, now reflecting back, she feels like she's missed out on so much. And it almost seems to me like, based on what Tiffany talks about in her experiences growing up in an open adoption, which I hope that you will watch that full video. Link is down in the video description below, and a card should be popping up. That when I really look at it, like, my overall takeaway from her experience, and I know that every adoptee in an open adoption, I'm sure, will say something different, and maybe some parts may be similar. But I almost think it possibly delays the grieving process of the trauma from the initial adoption. Because Tiffany talks about feeling the pressure to prove to her adoptive parents and to her first mother that she was okay. This situation that she was adopted, she's fine. They don't have anything to worry about. And it's like she felt this pressure, that's the front that she had to put forward. One of the things that made me think about my own adoption story is when Tiffany was 12 years old. She reflects on the fact that, she wasn't really able to advocate for herself because she didn't know what she should be asking for. She didn't think in long term as far as her connection and relationship with her first mother and what that meant and what that would mean for her when she was an adult. And so why that made me think of my own adoption story is because when I was 17, I was able to meet my first mother, and it was like a dream come true for me at the time. And a lot of the other stuff that I found out about my adoption, like the circumstances of why I was relinquished, went over my head because I just wanted to meet her. I wanted to know that I was loved. I wanted to know if she thought about me. I wanted to know who I looked like. I wanted to know my story, where I came from. And, I got all the answers and more. But I wasn't focused on health, like family health history or health records. I remember we did kind of ask this question, and my first mother just said that, they have healthy family, and that my first father had had a healthy heart. Those are the only like things that I remember from that conversation, or that part of the conversation, because so much of it went over my head. As a 17-year-old who's very healthy, who has her whole life ahead of her, who feels invincible, I didn't think of that. And so, there was an opportunity for me after this initial meeting where we had gone to Korea and everything, for me to correspond with my first mother, but I would have to send a letter to the agency who would then, translate it, and that would cost money. And then it would go to my first aunt, and then my first mother could read it in secret. My first mother got remarried, and so I was still a secret. And at 17, when you process this kind of a reunion after, kind of the honeymoon stage of the reunion sort of drifts away, and you process everything, it was really upsetting. And I became very angry and resentful about the whole situation, that she still kept me a secret. It was almost like she chose a different life over trying to keep me, or trying to fight for me to stay in her family, because I did find out that at 17, that I had 2 older half-brothers that she had kept. I found out that since I was born out of wedlock, I would not have been considered a citizen back in the 1980s, and then I wouldn't have been able to go to school, that the community would have ostracized me, so I would have been discriminated against based on something that was totally out of my control, that how I came to be in this world. And so growing up, I felt like I always skipped that emotion of, I guess, grief, the stages of grief people talk about, and people experience it in different orders and re-experience them throughout life as they're triggered. But the idea of being resentful towards my first mother for essentially giving me up for adoption, I never really went through those emotions when I was a kid. So it was when I went to college after the trip, a year later, that I started feeling angry and resentful towards her, towards my Korean culture, for not being accepting, for being so conservative that they would ostracize an innocent baby from their society because of illegitimacy. Now that I found out that I have stage 3 breast cancer, and I've been battling that for the past year amidst COVID-19, this crazy pandemic, and also finding out that I'm BRCA2 positive, that this is hereditary. And I remember asking my mom just recently about why we didn't reach out more for family health history. She said that she did ask me, and that I told her I didn't want to, and so she just left it at that. And that was when I was probably 18 or 19 years old in college, processing the trip, also processing my parents' divorce, and being in college. So there was so many different things going on in my life that I wanted to not think about the negative feelings I was having about my adoption at the time. So when Tiffany is talking about her struggles as an adult with realizing this was something she could have done, but she couldn't advocate for herself at 12 in an effective way because she didn't have the language, and she wasn't really aware of the impact it would have on her as an adult and later on in life. And for me at 17, 18, 19 years old, I was so young processing that. I also didn't know the importance of trying to know my family health history. And so that's something I struggle with too. I wish my parents had been more of an advocate and at least maybe done that for me and then had that information. And so when I was ready to revisit it, then it would be available to me. And so as I'm battling this cancer, I also did another family search to try and just find out family health history, not to ask for a relationship with any of my first family members just to know the information. And again, I met with my first mother when the agency contacted her that I'm still a secret, that she does not want to be contacted, and that, both of my first parents were contacted, and they both said that they didn't know of any cancer in their family. And here's the thing, I don't know if I believe them, because there's so much shame and secrecy around adoption over in Korea still, and in many countries, and even in the US, that I don't know if I believe either of them. And I look back on that in many ways that Tiffany does when she was 12, but I was 17. I think you, as an adoptive parent, may have a foresight that your child may not see quite yet, and just to advocate for them. Another thing that Tiffany talks about is that she feels that she has almost the best case scenario of adoption. It's open, it was private, and she believes that there was minimal coercion involved. And even with that, as an adult, in reflecting back on her adoption and realizing how much trauma that she didn't realize as a child and how that affected her behavior, she didn't come to realize that until she was an adult. Every adoptive parent wants to hear that their child thinks that they are enough, that their love is enough, and that they love them enough, that they don't need to feel that they have to go searching for their roots, for their first parents. But I think kids in open adoptions, it's important to tell them that it's okay if they feel this need to look for them. It's okay to allow those feelings to surface, because it does not negate their love for them as their parents. And I think that's really important to let adoptees know. You don't have to divide your love. The parents have to really know how to talk to them and initiate those conversations that may be uncomfortable, but lead them in a way that allows the child to talk about them, helping them sit in discomfort as they face these conflicting emotions, and how to hold those both. My overall takeaway from Tiffany's interview about being raised in an open adoption is that I felt very sad and disappointed, because I really thought that perhaps open adoption is much better for the child. But I think that it just creates this own separate and unique set of issues. It may just play a part in delaying the grieving process for some adoptees. Tiffany said it so well, basically, that she wants adoptive parents to be prepared for their adult adopted child, that they may come back and say that they have revisited their childhood and this is how they feel about it. So I just want to thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. The best way to support my work is to like, subscribe, and comment, and make sure to ring that notifications bell. And I'll see you next week on Adoption Education.